What's up guys, Saf here on SuperSaf TV, and it's the one you've all been waiting for, the SuperSaf style camera comparison between the Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra and the iPhone 13 Pro Max. We're going to be testing out all aspects of the cameras, front-facing, rear-facing, images, videos, low light, cinematic video. Let's get to it. So we're going to kick things off with photos, which most people are interested in, but I'll try to leave some timestamps down below if you're interested in a particular section. I would advise you watch all of it to give it some context, but hey, so starting off with the primary cameras. In good light, the situation is the same. You really can't go wrong with either. Lots of detail and very sharp. You'd struggle to tell these images apart, but if you do look closely, the S22 Ultra is a tad more vibrant, especially if you look towards the ground. Now you can achieve a similar type of a look on the iPhone by using the different photographic styles when shooting. I personally like to leave things at standard because that's where I think the iPhone performs best in my opinion. So I'll be leaving it at standard for the rest of this comparison. Now here's another example. Both are doing excellent here. Lots of detail, and the thing I like most here is the shallow depth of field. You've got great separation here in the foreground and the background. Now on this image, it's quite interesting. The S22 Ultra has boosted up the shadows, which initially gives you a more pleasing result, and it's the one that I do personally prefer. But whenever I talk about this, a lot of people say that they prefer the more natural look of the iPhone, whereas the S22 Ultra does look a bit more processed. So I know you guys hate me saying this, but I guess it's going to come down to personal preference. However, if you were to ask me, my personal preference here would be the S22 Ultra. And here's another example. So once again, the S22 Ultra has boosted up the shadows, which I do prefer. And then the iPhone isn't doing bad at all, but the shadows are darker, which some people may prefer. Now for low light images from the primary camera, I think both are excellent. You can check out this image. It's just street lighting, but both are doing great. We've got lots of detail. Now we do have some lens flare where the light is coming in. This is something that I think both are doing pretty badly, but generally speaking, great images here in low light. Now for this image, again, both are doing really good. I would lean towards the S22 Ultra slightly because it does look a little sharper. However, in this image, the iPhone is sharper if you look towards the bricks and the windows, and it's also brighter. However, there is a lot of processing going on towards the ground. So if you look towards the grass and the slabs, you can see that processing, whereas there is not as much on the S22 Ultra. However, it's not as sharp. So here I would lean towards the iPhone 13 Pro Max. Now an indoor low light shot. So here for me, it's the S22 Ultra. It's a brighter and sharper image. Now with the iPhone, it tends to just go to 3 seconds in low light. You can manually push it all the way to 10 seconds. However, I did find that the S22 Ultra in night mode, in many situations, did opt for around 6 seconds. Now moving on to the ultra-wide cameras, I think both have excellent ultra-wide cameras. The iPhone 13 Pro Max is a tad wider compared to the S22 Ultra. But here in this shot, it's definitely a draw. Both are doing excellent, great colors, great detail. But I did find when you got to more tricky situations like this one, where there was a lot more shadow detail, I did prefer the S22 Ultra. Now the iPhone here is giving you more of a silhouette, but if you look at the shadow details of the tree, the S22 Ultra is the one for me. Now for this shot, it was kind of the opposite. So the S22 Ultra has exposed for the highlights in the background, whereas the iPhone 13 Pro Max has exposed for the shadows in the foreground, and it has blown out the highlights in the background. So I'd say the perfect shot would be somewhere in between these two. You can definitely notice how much wider the iPhone 13 Pro Max is here compared to the S22 Ultra. Now both devices can use the ultra-wide camera to focus in closer for macro shots. This is something that I really enjoy. And here you can see all the little details, all of those dust particles on my steering wheel, which you can't normally notice, I promise. Pause. Hey guys, SuperSaf here. Sorry to interrupt. This guy's really not good at reminding you. We're currently working on a hands-on comparison as well between the iPhone 13 Pro Max and the Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra. That's going to be live in a couple of days. If you don't want to miss it, then maybe consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon, all notifications on. That way you'll be one of the first to watch it. All right, I'll let you guys get back. Play. Now, generally, I think both do great. However, I did notice that you can focus in closer on the iPhone 13 Pro Max. So that is an advantage you get for macro mode on the 13 Pro Max. Now, low light from the ultra-wide camera. This was really interesting. The S22 Ultra I found generally gave brighter and sharper images. If you look towards the Marriott sign, you can see that it's clearer on the S22 Ultra compared to the iPhone 13 Pro Max. And on this ultra-wide low light image, the iPhone is a tad brighter. You can see a bit more of the ground, but it is very, very soft in those areas. The S22 Ultra is completely black on those areas. However, if you look towards the house, it is sharper. So I guess I'd call this one a bit of a draw. Right, moving on to the telephoto cameras. So the S22 Ultra has two telephoto cameras, 3 times and 10 times periscope zoom. The iPhone 13 Pro Max has a single telephoto camera at 3 times. So if you go in 3 times at this image, you'll notice that even though both are 3 times, the iPhone is a little bit closer. So it seems like even though it's 3 times, the focal length is slightly different on both devices. However, I think both are doing really good. We've got good colors and sharp details. Now here's where the S22 Ultra really shines with its periscope zoom camera at 10 times. The iPhone 13 Pro Max can only do digital zoom at 10 times, and this is something that you can definitely see here. The S22 Ultra giving you a much sharper and cleaner image, and the iPhone 13 Pro Max maxes out at 15 times zoom. 13 Pro Max maxes out, okay. Again, this is mostly digital zoom, so if we compare it to the 30 times of the S22 Ultra, thanks to the periscope zoom, it's actually a very usable image. Now the S22 Ultra can go extreme all the way up to 100 times. Now I'm gonna be honest with you, I generally don't ever use it at 100 times because unless you're trying to stalk somebody or look into this window like so, then it's not something you're gonna use. But you can if you want to kind of zoom into a sign, or if you're trying to stalk your ex. I wouldn't advise doing that because you might have a surprise. Anyway, a quick low light test. Again, you can see the difference in focal length when we're using the 3 times zoom camera. And I think both are doing pretty decent here. The S22 Ultra is brighter and it does appear sharper, but if we look towards the text, you can see there's a lot of artifacts and it's starting to get quite pixelated because of the post-processing. Now let's move on to portraits. This is something that I was very excited to test out because Samsung has really played up a big game talking about their AI stereo depth map technology, which is supposed to be able to really isolate your subject. And here, to be fair, the S22 Ultra is doing an excellent job. The edges are almost perfect. The iPhone 13 Pro Max is also doing really well at 1 times, but it has missed out a slight bit near my face. Now with both devices, you can have portraits with the primary camera or the telephoto camera. Previously, Samsung devices could do portraits at 1, 2, as well as 3 times. However, I complained about it many times in my videos, and I'm sure Samsung is watching my videos because 2 times was using digital zoom and it didn't really look good. So I'm glad they've got rid of this. And if we do go in 3 times, I mean, wow, I think both are doing excellent here. The edges are so good on both of these, and this is my preferred focal length for portraits. Now let's break this down because this is really interesting. The first thing I will say is that there is a bit of flaring going on near my top area on the S22 Ultra, whereas I think the iPhone is giving more of a cleaner image. However, look at the edges of the S22 Ultra. Let's zoom in. It's actually been able to pick out single strands of hair from my beard, including the fluff hair on my ears, which I'm personally not too ecstatic about, if I'm honest. But genuinely speaking, Samsung was not messing around when they were talking about the stereo depth technology. I mean, in this example, at least, it's working really well. Now, looking at this zoomed in image, I am noticing that the iPhone does have an overall sharper image, especially if you look towards my beard area. The strands of hair are more clearer and more sharper compared to the S22 Ultra. But in terms of edges, I mean, Samsung, well done. Here's another example, and again, the edges on the Samsung are really good. It's picked out all of the bits in between my arms as well, whereas the iPhone has actually missed those 2 bits. The iPhone also has some errors towards my face area, whereas the S22 Ultra is doing really well. Now, if we use the 3 times on both of these, I think both are actually doing really well here. The iPhone has struggled a little bit around my ear, and so has the S22 Ultra in a few bits near my jacket. But overall, I think both are doing an excellent job, and these are really good portraits at that 3 times optical zoom. Now, another thing Samsung was talking about was low light. So here's a low light portrait. And again, I do prefer the Samsung here. If you look towards my hair on the iPhone, it has struggled a little bit and blended that into the background, whereas the S22 Ultra has done a great job in terms of edges. Very good. Now, you can use the 3 times in night mode as well somewhat, but realistically speaking, the optical zoom cameras don't have as much of a wide aperture, so they can't let in as much light. So you really get some soft images. I mean, the S22 Ultra is brighter here, but it's just not sharp. It looks like they might have cropped into the main sensor. The iPhone was actually even struggling to take this picture, but eventually it managed to take this picture, which again looks okay. It's not as bright as the S22 Ultra, but it is sharper. Now here's another example at 1x. And here, again, I do prefer the S22 Ultra. The iPhone has done well overall. However, it has struggled with my hair once again. So for portraits, Samsung, you've done a great job. Right, now let's move on to selfies. I think both of these take excellent selfies. You can see here, we've got lots of detail. The iPhone I am leaning towards because it is brighter in the shadow areas, and I think especially for selfies, it's important to have brighter shadow areas so you can see your full face. And I also prefer that the iPhone does give you a wider angle of view for selfies. We can go to this wider view, but it's not as wide on the S22 Ultra compared to the iPhone 13 Pro Max. Now both devices can also do portrait mode from the front-facing cameras, and I mean, they're doing so well here. The edges are really good. Again, the iPhone does have brighter shadow areas, which on this image I do prefer. In terms of skin tones, I'm a bit too orange on the iPhone, but I'm a bit too yellow on the S22 Ultra. I'd say my skin tone is roughly in between these two. But you know how we were just talking about the wider angle of view on the iPhone for selfies? Well, unfortunately, you can't use portrait mode at that wider angle of view. However, you can use the wider angle of view on the S22 Ultra for portraits. So this is an advantage that you've got here. I thought I'd try out another selfie. Now this is a tricky selfie with lots of light coming in from the background. And overall, I think both are doing really good. However, the S22 Ultra has maintained more of the detail in the background. And if we do portrait mode on both of these, again, I mean, portrait mode from the selfie cameras, I gotta say, very good. Both are doing an excellent job. Now, low light selfies with both of the devices, you can use night mode from the front facing camera as well. And because this does take a few seconds, I mean, you can hold your hand still, but it's difficult to also keep your face still at the same time. So neither of these are that sharp. I would say that I'd lean towards the S22 Ultra because things are quite soft towards my jacket on the iPhone 13 Pro Max. Now you can also use the selfie flash on both devices that will illuminate the display for selfies. And I think both are doing decent here. The S22 Ultra is brighter, but it has kind of washed things out a little bit. So I'll let you guys decide which one you prefer here. Now let's move on to video. Let me just say that both of these take excellent quality video, and I'm very impressed with both of these. However, I hate to sound like a broken record, but overall, the iPhone, in my opinion, is still king for video. Let me tell you why. So here you can see we're filming at 4K 30 frames a second. I did feel that the iPhone 13 Pro Max was more stable overall compared to the S22 Ultra. And this was also the case at 4K 60 frames a second, both on the primary and ultra-wide cameras. Even for low light video, check out this example here. When I'm walking, things are just a little bit shaky on the S22 Ultra, and especially when we get towards the more darker areas, the iPhone 13 Pro Max is just brighter. For autofocus in good light, both are pretty much neck and neck, but once again, when we get to low light, the S22 Ultra can struggle to focus, whereas the iPhone 13 Pro Max, thanks to that LiDAR scanner, does snap on very quickly. Now the S22 Ultra does have laser autofocus, so I'm not sure why it struggles in extreme low light, but the iPhone does do better in low light once again. Now for slow motion, both of these can film at 1080p 240 frames a second, but the S22 Ultra can do 720p at 960 frames a second, a small burst. I mean, the quality of this is really not that good, and I really don't see myself ever using it, but hey, the feature's there if you want to use it. And the S22 Ultra does also have the ability to film at 8K. Now this does crop in quite significantly, and stabilization isn't really good, so I'd only advise using this if you're going to be having it on a tripod. But when it comes to dynamic range from video, now HDR video is very difficult to show in a video that's going to be exported out in standard dynamic range and viewed by hopefully millions of different people. But once again, the iPhone 13 Pro Max just gives you overall better dynamic range with great details in shadows and highlights. This was especially noticeable from the front-facing camera. You may have noticed it during the introduction. You also get a slightly wider angle of view from the front-facing camera on the iPhone 13 Pro Max, which I do prefer. So for front-facing camera video as well, I do prefer the iPhone 13 Pro Max overall. Now we do have cinematic video on the iPhone 13 Pro Max, which is going to give you an artificial blur. The S22 Ultra has portrait video. Now here you can see from the front-facing camera, the S22 Ultra is actually doing a better job with the edges. Samsung has really done some good work with this AI depth algorithm. The area towards my ears, the edges of my sunglasses have all been better maintained on the S22 Ultra. Now for the rear-facing camera, when it comes to this cinematic portrait video, the S22 Ultra and the iPhone 13 Pro Max do pretty decent, but honestly speaking, there's just too many mistakes and too many edges getting blurred here and there, so I can't see myself using either of these. Now, one advantage that you do get on the S22 Ultra is you can do this portrait video at 1 times as well as 3 times, and at 3 times it actually gives you a better result. On the iPhone 13 Pro Max cinematic video, however, you can actually adjust the point of focus after the fact and also adjust the amount of blur in the background, which is really good. You can't do this on the S22 Ultra, it's all baked in. The S22 Ultra also has a new feature called auto framing, which is going to automatically frame subjects by shooting a wide angle and then kind of zooming in. It reminds me a little bit of center stage that we've got on the iPads, for example. Now this does work and it's okay, it's not brilliant, but it's not something that I personally find myself using too much. However, if that's something that you're into, this is a feature that you've got on the S22 Ultra, which you don't have on the iPhone 13 Pro Max. Now for audio, go ahead, have a listen. This is the audio test of the Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra. That's what we're currently recording with. Now let's switch over to the iPhone 13 Pro Max. And I'm gonna carry on talking. Let me know what you guys think of the audio. Back to the Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra. And now the iPhone 13 Pro Max. My name is SuperSaf and you're watching SuperSaf TV. I don't know why I still use TV. It just kind of has a good ring to it, but hey. Now I'm going to be honest with you, they both sounded really good to me and my hearing isn't the best, but if I do put on some headphones and listen to these carefully, then I would have to give the slight edge to the S22 Ultra, which I believe did a better job of eliminating the background noise. And that is the SuperSaf style camera comparison between the Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra and the iPhone 13 Pro Max. In my opinion, both of these are some of the best camera smartphones out there, and I don't think you can go wrong with either. If somebody tells you one is significantly better than the other, they're totally lying to you. I think in a lot of areas they do go neck and neck. Yes, the S22 Ultra has its advantages. I think it gives you overall better dynamic range for images. And you also have the advantage of the periscope zoom technology. You've also got amazing edge detection for portraits. And although the S22 Ultra does do really good in the way of video, I still don't think it matches up to the iPhone 13 Pro Max, which consistently, in my opinion, gave better dynamic range, better low light video, but also did great for images, in some cases beating out the S22 Ultra. That's what I think anyway. What do you guys think? Do drop me a comment below. Let me know your thoughts. If you're interested in buying the S22 Ultra or the iPhone 13 Pro Max, I'll leave some deal links down below. You can currently get like $50 of credit if you use one of my affiliate links. And if you want to see lots of different images from many different devices, then be sure to follow me on Instagram. I am at SuperSaf and I post very regularly on there. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, then do smash that like button for me. These camera comparisons take forever to do and I haven't really slept much over the past few days. And if you appreciate that and want to see more content like this, then don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon, because I'm going to be working on a hands-on comparison between these two very soon and you don't want to miss it. Thanks for watching. This is Saf on SuperSaf TV and I'll see you next time.